Revelation 6, verse 12. We've finished 5 of the 7 seals, and now we'll get, I think, the last 2. We may get stuck on just one, but we'll try to finish these seals up, and then I'll give you a homework assignment. Remind me if I forget.
Is this chapter 6?
Chapter 6. Chapter 6, verse 12.
Seal Team 6. That's
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very good.
Revelation 6:12. And I beheld when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together. And every mountain and island were moved out of their place. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens, and in the rocks of the mountains, and said unto the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Now, we've been getting 1 or 2 verses on these seals. Here we've been given a whole bunch of verses. So this is important, and we're coming toward the end of it. This is, there's a day of darkness, obviously, that happens, and it comes all the way through the Bible. You see it over and over. It's not only biblical, it's been seen in history. On May 19th, 1780, there was in New England what's called in history the Dark Day. It wasn't an eclipse of the sun, yet it was dark enough to make the stars visible. And the chickens went to roost. They thought it was nighttime. The cause of that darkness has never been explained. It's God. He does that from time to time. We see all of those plagues in the Old Testament. That's a pre-warning to anybody of how powerful he is. And those are going to repeat during the tribulation. Now, a little difference. In Egypt, they were aimed at Egypt. In the tribulation, they're aimed at Israel, his people. And just like in Egypt, for half of those plagues, the children of Israel had to suffer through. Well, in the tribulation, all of the things that are coming, everybody on earth has to suffer through, even though they're intended to restore what's due Israel to their God. At this point in the tribulation, in the passage we just read, men don't try to explain away the wrath of God as science. They're saying, hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne. There's no more of this, I don't believe in God business. No, there's been too much proof of God, too many supernatural things happening, to where that's no longer a question. The only thing they have a question about is it going to be my turn next? And they're voicing it. Hide us. He's mad, and he's taking it out on everybody. It's God doing it. It's the Lamb up on the throne. They know. Too bad we can't find more people that know that now.
Amen.
He says in verse 15, Revelation 6:15, and the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men. Now those are all the intellectuals. Those are the highfalutin, high-class people. But even these people are no longer denying God. And every bondman, that's your slaves, and every free man, that's just normal Joe, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said unto the mountains and the rocks, Fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne. They knew there's somebody controlling things way bigger than man. He's got a throne that controls all things that happen on this earth. And from the wrath of the Lamb, they know he's mad. This is alluded to all through the Bible. Isaiah 13. Isaiah 13, verse 9. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel, both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. It's going to be darkness. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cast her light, cause her light to shine. So the heavens are going to be dark. That's saying there's no, you can't approach to God. The lights in the heavens say, hey, I want to talk to you. Let me give you some information. Let me illuminate you. But when it's dark up there, he's saying, I'm done. Talk time is over. In Isaiah 24, verse 23, he says, the moon shall be confounded, and the sun ashamed, when the Lord of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion, in Jerusalem, and before his ancients gloriously. So before he comes to rule and reign, he turns out the lights. Said, you didn't want to hear from me before? Too late now. I'm done. Isaiah 29, verse 6. Thou shalt be visited of the Lord of hosts with thunder and with earthquake. That's how he said that sixth seal opened. And with great noise of a storm and a tempest and the flame of devouring fire. It's going to be bad news. Ezekiel 32, verse 7. Ezekiel 32, verse 7. An Israelite, a Jew, who's been reading the Old Testament, should recognize these things in the book of Revelation. That's all part of their history. It's all part of the prophecy. And when they read Revelation, it should click in their mind. Isaiah talked about that. Joel talked about it. Ezekiel talked about that. It should start clicking. Ezekiel 32, 7. And when I shall put thee out, I will cover the heaven and make the stars thereof dark. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give her light. All the bright lights of heaven will I make dark over thee, and set darkness upon thy land, saith the Lord God. It's going to actually happen. This is not figurative. We're not spiritualizing anything. He said it. He means it. He's going to do it. Question?
What is the reference?
That was Ezekiel 32, verse 7. 7 and 8.
Okay, I was in Isaiah.
Ezekiel 32, no, I just read that. Joel chapter 2. Joel 2, verse 10. The earth shall quake before them, the heavens shall tremble, the sun and the moon shall be dark, the stars shall withdraw their shining. Over and over, it's saying the same event. This is really going to happen, just like that. The earth quaking is God getting mad. And you'll find another place in the Bible, I didn't put it in here, but where is that? In Amos? He talks about the days of the earthquake, as though it was some event that we don't have recorded. However, it made such an impression that they could date things by it. God does these earthquakes, he does these major events to get people's attention. It's him. In Joel 2, look at verse 30. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord come. Now, as if the 7 and however many hours previous tribulation wasn't enough, that's not considered the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord is when he touches down with an army and it's Armageddon. That's the day. Now, many times the day is referred to the whole period. But here he's talking about that one event. One event is going to be terrible. In Joel 3, verse 15. Joel 3:15. The sun and the moon shall be darkened. The stars shall withdraw their shining. It's one time after the next all the way through the Bible. The stars are going out, the moon's not going to give its light, and the sun's going to say, I feel like sleeping in today. In Matthew 28, verse 2. Matthew 28, 2. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven, and came and rolled back the stone from the door, and sat upon it. Now he's not mad here, he's happy. Or maybe he's mad that somebody put a stone up there. But when something as big and powerful as a being that is above man, supernatural, God created, comes to this little puny planet, it shakes. It shakes. In Revelation 8, verse 3. Revelation 8:3. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. Okay, these are actual angels. These are not human. They're not something we can spiritualize and say, that's your godly part of your being. No, it's an actual angel. They're all throughout the book. We just saw an angel touch down and the earth quaked. Angel goes back up. They're running errands. They're busy. They're not just sitting up there playing harps. In the tribulation, they're going to be real busy. In Revelation 11, verse 13. Revelation 11:13. And the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell. And in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000, and the remnant were affrighted, I guess so, and gave glory to God of heaven. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And we're going to say woe on that. We'll catch those woes later. Revelation 16, verse 16. And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. And the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, It is done. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth. So mighty an earthquake and so great. God uses this earthquake all the way through. He tries to shake man up. I mean, literally shaking him up with an earthquake. You can't stand on the ground and not shake. He's saying, fear before me. The whole Old Testament is about fear God. And he keeps getting more and more blatant with it. Hey, I'm trying to talk to you. You better be scared of me. I'm way bigger than you. Now, there's a comparison we can do of what we've gotten so far, the 6 seals, with something Jesus said when he was here. We'll look at it. Matthew 24, verse 1. Matthew 24, verse 1. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, 3 questions. When shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? Now, those are 3 questions that we've seen. We've seen it so close in the book of Revelation, we didn't identify it as 3 questions. But the disciples asked those 3 questions, and Jesus answered them. It's the same answer we've already read in Revelation, but let's look at it. The 3 questions there are going to tell us something. In Matthew 24, verse 4 and 5, Jesus answered and said to them, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. Who is that? That's the first seal, the white horse. Shows up with peace to deceive many. He's Christ. He goes into the temple, declares himself to be God. That was in Revelation 6, 1 and 2. The next thing is Matthew 24, look at verse 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. What's that? The red horse. We saw it, seal number 2. That's Revelation 6, 3 and 4. in Matthew 24, verse 7, he says, and there shall be famines. It's staying right in order. Seal number 3, that's the black horse. He brings famine. That's Revelation 6, 5, and 6.
Revelation 5 and 6 is what?
That's the black horse. Famines. You'll find that reference at the end of Matthew 24, verse 7.
Okay, never mind. I got off track.
Matthew 24, verse 7 to 8. We've seen the famine. Now he says, and pestilent and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. So that's seal number 4. That's the pale horse. He brings death and pestilence. That's found in Revelation 6, verse 7 to 8. I'm moving fast, I know, probably too fast. How about this? Why don't I put it on the screen for you?
So they're there, that's all that matters.
Okay, here we go. Here's the 3 questions, and here's how they line up. Seal number 1, the Antichrist, false Christ. That's the white horse that shows up first. He comes in peaceably, gains the kingdom by flattery. Revelation 6, verse 1 to 2. Matthew 24, verse 4 to 5. Matthew 24, verse 6 to 7 is the second seal. That's bringing in war, the red horse. That seal was found in Revelation 6, 3 to 4. In Matthew 24, 7, he talks about the famines. That's seal number 3. That's the black horse. We found it in Revelation 6, 5 to 6. Matthew 24, 7 and 8 talks about pestilence, earthquakes in divers places, and he talks about this being the beginning of sorrows. That's the 4th seal. Pestilence, the pale horse, death. It's Revelation 6, 7 to 8. And then the 5th seal is here, Matthew 24, 9 to 13. And they shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, cut your head off. And ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Many false prophets shall arise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. This is where it fits. The 5th seal, that's Revelation 6, 9 to 11. That's where they're getting their heads chopped off, the saints under the altar. Matthew 24, 14. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness to all nations, then shall the end come. So at that point, persecution always makes God's things grow. It does the opposite of what the devil thinks it'll do. The persecution of the church made it spread. When these saints start getting their heads cut off, it starts making people say, hey, I want to find out what that is. The Jews start picking up the Bible and say, hey, I think I remember reading something about that. It's going to work. Now, the gospel of the kingdom is going to be preached. Again, a kingdom. Because there's a kingdom coming, and that's what the Jews always been looking for. Now, what we're preaching right now is not the gospel of the kingdom. If any of these kingdoms down here are what you want, hang on, you can stay here and get it.
Yeah.
This is a nightmare. The gospel of the grace of God is what we're preaching. Okay, answer to the second question. He says in Matthew 24:15, and when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. So here's the sign of desolation. What will be the sign of your coming? Here it is. Desolation. This guy stands where he should not be standing. Says some things he should not be saying. This is an individual. It's not spiritualized. It's something that Daniel said you could look for. It's an event that everybody's supposed to be watching and waiting for, and that'll mark something. That's in Daniel 9:27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for a week. That's the Antichrist makes a covenant with Israel and with the other nations. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice of oblation to cease. He's going to go into the temple, say, no more of this. And for the overspread of the abominations, he shall make it desolate. Even unto the consumption that is determined shall be poured upon the desolate. There it is. That's the sign. In Matthew 24, we just read that. Go to Mark 13:14. He says, but when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand. Then let him that be in Judea flee to the mountains. You better run for your life. And literally. In Luke 21:20, he says the same thing. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Okay, you start seeing these armies moving in. He's making ready for something. He's about to walk into the temple. And when he does, he's doing this right here. And that's going to be his code word for the armies. Go out and get them. In Matthew 24:16. He says, then let them which be in Judea flee unto the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field turn back and take his clothes. And woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. Now, people try to spiritualize this. Don't spiritualize it, or you mess it all up. If you're going to spiritualize it, you have to spiritualize all of it. Okay, so let's spiritualize it like a heathen. Okay, so we've seen this take place. Let's assume we've seen this take place. Here's the way they spiritualize it. Well, there's not really an antichrist. There's just a spirit of something against Christ. And the place it stands is in the altar of your heart. And okay, well, if that's so, let's follow the rest of the verse. When you see that, get down and run to the mountains. How are we going to spiritualize that? You know, is that an advertisement for Busch beer or something? Head for the hills? I mean, come on. You can't spiritualize it. It's all literal, 100%. It works if it's all literal, because then they literally come down off of their rooftop and start running. And pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. Well, how are you going to spiritualize that? Sabbath day is the day that they got close to God. So don't do that on the Sabbath day when the Antichrist is ruling in your heart. No, it doesn't fit that way. It's all literal. This is the Great Tribulation, verse 21. Then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened. Now, what does that mean? He said, great tribulation here. It's fallen. It's going to be worse than anybody's ever seen, worse than the earth has ever seen. Bad news. And if God does not shorten it, now let's get the exact wording. Except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. That is, not even the Jews who are believing Christ wouldn't even be saved. But for the elect's sake, the Jews that are sealed, the ones who are believing, those days shall be shortened. So what's he doing here?
15-hour day.
Maybe. It's either the actual day itself has less hours in it. We've already seen the heavens not giving their light. Or it means the number of days in the tribulation will be lessened. So while he's decreed you get 7 years, he may say, out of mercy, I'm going to cut it short. And I'll come at this point.
Well, he's God.
He can do anything he wants, right? You'll find a passage, I didn't put it in here, I should have, in Job, where Job is crying, and Job is a book of tribulation prophecies. Job is saying about his days, let it not come into the number of the days. Okay, so he's saying subtract these days. Now, we've already seen him do it in the 70 weeks of Daniel's prophecy. This time period we're in right now, the church age, is not included in the 70 weeks. He's subtracting that. And then he'll start all over when he decides to reset the clock. He may do the same thing in the tribulation. Just out of mercy's sake, he may say, enough's enough, pour the last vial, we'll go down and get them.
But he's already proved that he can lengthen a day.
Oh, yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
And it was the king's option to lengthen it or shorten it.
Right.
And he said, no, I'm not going to go there. Whatever he feels is good, do it. So they lengthened it. So, yeah, he can make a 24-hour day if he 10 hours.
Yep. Answer to the third question asked in Matthew is the end of the world. Matthew 24:29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days. So what's the tribulation of those days? What he already said, great tribulation. Shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Now, this is not his saints seeing him. This is not you see him when you look in the Bible and you learn something about Jesus. Now we've spiritualized it, and that's you viewing Jesus coming in the cloud. No. These people are crying because they see him. It's not tears of joy. It's tears of woe is me. That's the sixth seal. Those will be physical changes in this earth and the heavens. That's in Revelation 6:12-17. And we just covered that one. Okay, he talked about the fig tree there in Matthew 24, verse 32. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When its branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. Do the math, is what he's saying. So likewise ye, when you shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the floor. I thought it was doors. Does it say doors?
Yes.
At the doors. I got that spell check. Must have messed me up. So
They're going to be floored.
they're going to be floored. That's for sure. Mhm. Doors, yes. My spell check says it's supposed to be floors, not doors.
That's funny.
Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. And I've already shown you that it means literally what it's saying. This generation, what's this generation? This generation is the one who sees all these things happen. When you see this, when you see that, okay, the one who sees that generation won't pass till everything's fulfilled. Now, the generation he's talking about is not human generation. It's Earth's generation. The Earth regenerates every 7 years. That's why there's 7 years to the tribulation. He says to 1,000 generations in about 10 places in the Bible. And it literally means 1,000 generations, not for humans, but for Earth. That means this Earth lasts 7,000 years, just like the days of creation. Okay, so that's talking to the Jews in particular. We'll pick up this last seal, Revelation 8, verse 1 and 2. We jump from chapter 6 all the way to chapter 8. Mm-hmm.
This is the seventh seal? Yes.
Yes,
What seal?
7.
7. The one right after 6, whatever that is. The seventh seal. Now you'll find this all throughout the Bible. You see this. It's like when we're telling a story and you all of a sudden get hung up on a detail and you start telling a different story, but you plan on getting back to your main story. I call that running a rabbit trail. The Bible does that all through. Or he'll start telling you something and then realize that you need some more details for what he's about to tell you. And then he'll back up and give you more information that really didn't fit where he put it. But it's information you're going to need for the future. The Bible does that, and especially in the book of Revelation. So that's why we've skipped a whole chapter. Because he gave us details in chapter 7 that are not the seals. But he does that. Now he's picking back up on this 7th seal. We're going to finish it here. Revelation 8, 1-2. We're not going to finish the sermon, but I mean the seals. And when I saw people get excited. Yeah. And when he'd opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Okay, silence in heaven. That's how you know that when you get to heaven, everyone is male. Because women couldn't be silent for a half an hour. This 7th seal, you decide. Does this 7th seal include the 7 trumpets and the 7 vials? How do you figure all that? I don't know. But I'm going to give you some homework. And then we'll be done. The next thing to go through is the trumpets. We've seen the seals. Next we'll see the trumpets. If I can find my notes. Okay. The trumpets are found in chapter 8 through chapter 11. That's where you'll find the warnings that the trumpets and the destruction they pour out. So go through there and find out. It's real simple because he says the first trumpet, the second trumpet, you can number them because he did it for you. So identify those trumpets. It shouldn't be that difficult, but it's going to be more difficult than you think. Then do this. Fit those trumpets where they belong in the seals we just covered. We just covered 7 seals that cover all 7 years of the tribulation. Now you're going to get trumpets. Fit them in where they belong with the seals. Okay, so some people will tell you, here's the conflict. Some people will tell you that the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets are covering the same period of time. Some people will say they cover the first half. Some people will say they only cover the second half of the tribulation. You decide. It's your picture. You paint it any way you want, says Bob Ross. So look through those and see if you can find out. There's going to be some similarities to what you've already seen. So just fit them where they belong.